Even though you've been separated for a long time, the narcissist still thinks about you all the time. There's something deeply unsettling about knowing that someone who once tried to control you still thinks about you. Even after years have passed, you left, you healed, you built a life that no longer orbits their chaos. And yet, somewhere in the back of their mind, you remain, not as a person they loved or even truly cared for, but as a lingering presence they can't quite erase. It doesn't make sense at first. If they were the ones who moved on, if they found someone new, if they seem unaffected by your absence, why do they keep circling back? Why do they still watch your social media? Why do they send strange messages disguised as coincidence? Why do they bring up your name in conversations with others? The truth is far more complex than most people realize. Narcissists don't forget you, not because they miss you, but because they can't accept what your absence represents. You weren't just another person in their life. You were someone who saw through them, someone who resisted their control, someone who walked away. And for someone who thrives on dominance and admiration, that kind of loss isn't easily forgotten. Today, we're diving deep into psychology behind why. Even after years of separation, the narcissist still thinks about you constantly. We'll explore this from a behavioral and psychological perspective, based on real observations made by psychologists who study narcissistic personality disorder and its long-term effects on relationships. This isn't about love. It's not about longing or regret. It's about power, about control, about the fear of exposure. And once you understand why they can't let go, you'll finally see the truth. It was never about you. It was always about them. Let's begin. 1. They can't let go because they fear exposure. One of the most painful truths about being involved with a narcissist is realizing that they saw you less as a partner and more as a reflection of themselves. Every interaction was a performance. Every compliment a manipulation. Every moment of affection carefully timed to keep you engaged. But somewhere along the way, you saw through it. You noticed the inconsistencies. You questioned the narrative. You stopped playing the game. And that terrified them. Because when someone sees past a mask, it threatens the illusion they spent years perfecting. The narcissist lives in constant fear of exposure. Not because they believe they did anything wrong, but because they know if others see them clearly, they won't be admired anymore. And without admiration, they feel empty. That's why you remain in their thoughts. You represent a crack in their carefully constructed identity. 2. You represent control they lost. Narcissists thrive on control. It's the foundation of everything they do. Whether it's rewriting history, gaslighting those around them, or manipulating emotions, their goal is always the same: to maintain dominance over how others perceive them and how situations unfold. But you disrupted that control. You stood up for yourself. You set boundaries. You made choices that weren't dictated by their desires. And eventually you left entirely. For a narcissist, this isn't just frustrating. It's intolerable. Because when someone escapes their influence, it sends a message to everyone else in their orbit. Escape is possible. And that undermines the entire system they built to keep people under their thumb. So even though they've chosen someone new, they can't stop circling back to you. You're the reminder that they aren't as powerful as they pretend to be. And until they find a way to reassert control, even if only in their mind, they'll continue to obsess over you. 3. Their new relationship isn't real. It's just another performance. It's easy to assume that if the narcissist has found someone else, they must have moved on. But the reality is far more complex. Narcissists don't fall in love in the traditional sense. They fall in love with the idea of being loved. They fall in love with the feeling of adoration, the rush of attention, the thrill of having someone admire them unconditionally. The problem is, that kind of dynamic doesn't last forever. Eventually, the new person starts asking questions. They want honesty. They seek connection. They crave reciprocity. And when they begin to challenge the narcissist's behavior, the cycle repeats itself. That's why the narcissists often find themselves stuck between two worlds. The present, where their new partner demands things they can't provide, and the past, where you, the one who escaped, represent both a failure and a challenge. They may be with someone else now, but that relationship lacks depth. It's transactional. It's temporary. And while they try to convince themselves otherwise, They know it. That's why they keep coming back to you, not to reconnect, but to remind themselves that they still hold some power over someone who once resisted them. For obsession is a form of power, even in silence, even from a distance. The narcissist never fully disappears from your life. They may no longer be physically present. They may have moved on to someone else, and they may even pretend that you mean nothing to them, but their actions tell a different story. You can feel it in subtle ways. The way they monitor your social media profiles, keeping track of your posts, likes, comments, and updates as if searching for something meaningful. You sense it when mutual acquaintances mention them bringing you up unexpectedly, asking about your life with just enough interest to suggest that their curiosity isn't casual. It's intentional. And sometimes you receive messages or encounter situations that seem like coincidences at first glance, but upon reflection, carry an unmistakable undertone of familiarity. These behaviors are not random occurrences or idle habits. They are deliberate, calculated, and deeply rooted in the narcissist's need to maintain some form of psychological control over you. Each action, whether it's a silent observation, an indirect inquiry, or a message carefully worded to provoke a reaction, is part of a larger pattern. It's their way of reaching out without being obvious, of staying connected without being vulnerable. In essence, it's their way of saying, I'm still here, I still matter. But why go through all this effort? Why maintain such a quiet but persistent presence in your life when a relationship has clearly ended? The answer lies in the fundamental nature of narcissism itself. Narcissists do not build real emotional connections the way most people do. They don't know how to create intimacy based on trust, honesty, or mutual respect. Instead, they rely on manipulation, surveillance, and control to manufacture a sense of closeness, one that mimics connection but lacks authenticity. For them, obsession becomes a substitute for genuine emotional bonding. When they can't win love through vulnerability or earn admiration through sincerity, they resort to tactics that ensure they remain a part of your thoughts, even if only in the background. Their obsession is not born out of affection or longing. It's driven by a need to feel powerful, relevant, and in control, even when they are no longer in your physical space. They want to be felt, even if not loved. They want to leave an imprint, however subtle, on your emotions and thoughts. They want to make sure that you haven't completely erased them from your mind. And more than anything, they want to be remembered, not for who they truly were, but for the image they worked so hard to project. And perhaps most crucially, they want to win. To a narcissist, relationships aren't about mutual growth or shared experiences. They're about dominance, about proving who hold the upper hand. So even after you've walked away, even after you've healed and moved on, they continue these behaviors because winning means making sure you still think about them, that you still react, that you still remember. Because as long as they occupy space in your mind, they believe they haven't truly lost. 5. At the very heart of every narcissist behavior lies an unrelenting hunger for validation, a need so deep and persistent that it shapes nearly everything they do. They spend their entire lives chasing admiration, seeking approval, and avoiding any form of criticism or rejection. It's not just about being liked or respected. It's about survival in the only way they know how. Without that constant reinforcement, without people reflecting back the image they want to believe in, they begin to unravel. Their sense of self-worth isn't built on internal strength or genuine self-acceptance. It's entirely dependent on external sources, on the praise of others, on the attention they receive, on the illusion that they are powerful, admired, and untouchable. And when someone like you walks away, someone who once gave them that validation, it leaves behind a void they struggle to fill. You were more than just another person in their life. You were someone who listened, who engaged, who offered emotional energy, whether through support, resistance, or even conflict. Whether you were aware of it or not, your presence played a role in their psychological balance. You believed in them, at least enough to stay for a time. You gave them what they needed to feel powerful, even if that power was always fragile and conditional. But now that you're gone, they find themselves searching desperately for replacement sources of admiration and emotional fuel. They surround themselves with new people, new faces, new voices, new sources of attention, but none of them offer the same depth, the same weight as what you once provided. The new person may flatter them, may admire them, may even adore them in the beginning, But something is missing because that person never truly saw them. And that's what makes all the difference. The new source of validation doesn't carry the same significance because it wasn't there from the start. It didn't witness the inconsistencies, the manipulations, the moments when the mask slipped. It didn't challenge them the way you did. It didn't walk away after seeing too much. And that absence of real recognition, means of validation, it offers lacks the emotional weight the narcissist truly craves. That's why they keep returning to your memory again and again, not because they miss you as a person, not because they long for your presence, but because you represent something they can't fully replace. The ultimate test of their control. You were someone who once bought into their narrative, who gave them the validation they needed, and then, at some point, you stopped. You saw too much. You understood too deeply. And then you left. And for a narcissist, that kind of departure is one of the most destabilizing experiences they can face, because it confirms what they fear most, that their control isn't absolute, that their charm doesn't work on everyone, that their carefully constructed image can be seen through. So until they can rewrite that story in their mind, until they can convince themselves that they still hold the upper hand, that they weren't truly challenged, that they weren't really defeated, they won't be able to move on. Until they can reshape your memory into something that serves their ego rather than threatens it, they'll continue to circle back to you in thought, in action, in quiet obsession. Because for all their bravado, for all their confidence and manipulation, the truth remains. Without validation, they cannot feel whole. And you, by walking away, became living proof that their world is far more fragile than they want anyone to believe. 6. Healing truly begins the moment you come to a deep understanding. The narcissist's obsession with you is not about you at all. It has never been about your personal worth, your character, or the qualities that make you who you are. Their fixation does not stem from genuine affection, admiration, or even memory in the way most people experience it. Instead, it is rooted in something far more internal and troubling, something that lies entirely within them. At its core, their inability to move on is tied to their deep emotional dysfunction. Narcissists struggle profoundly with rejection, not because they feel lost in the way others do, but because rejection threatens the carefully built illusion of superiority they rely on to function. To them, being left, even by someone they may claim to have forgotten, is a blow to their ego, a crack in the image they work so hard to uphold. That's why they can't simply let go. That's why they keep circling back, even silently, even from a distance. Their obsession is also fueled by fear, specifically the fear of exposure. You were someone who saw through them. You witnessed the inconsistencies, the manipulation, the shifting narratives. And worse, you didn't stay around to help them maintain the lie. In their mind, you became living proof that their control isn't absolute. And for someone who thrives on dominance and influence, that is an intolerable reality. They try to mask this insecurity with behaviors that make it seem like they're still in charge, like sudden check-ins, calculated messages, or attempts to stir emotions. But these actions don't demonstrate strength. They reveal weakness. They expose how fragile their sense of self really is, how dependent they are on external validation, and how powerless they feel when someone breaks free from their grasp. Understanding this truth, that their continued focus on you is not a reflection of your importance to them, but rather a symptom of their own instability, is one of the most powerful realizations you can have. It shifts the narrative. It takes the weight off your shoulders. It allows you to stop questioning what you did wrong, or what you could have done differently, and instead recognize that none of this was ever really about you. You are not trapped by them anymore. You are not defined by their perception of you. You are not the lingering shadow they chase out of love or longing. You are simply evidence, living proof, that their world is not as flawless as they want others to believe. And that is precisely why they can't fully release you from their mind. Letting go of the idea that their behavior says something about you is where healing starts. Because once you see that their obsession is born from their own broken foundation, you begin to reclaim your power. You begin to walk away. Not just physically, but mentally and emotionally, and you do so knowing that you are no longer under their spell. In conclusion, even after all this time, after the years have passed, after the silence has settled, after you moved on with your life, The narcissist still carries your memory in a way that isn't about love, longing, or even genuine emotional attachment. It's not that they miss you as a person, not in any real or meaningful sense. No, what lingers in their mind is something far more unsettling. The fact that you were someone who saw through them, resisted their influence, and ultimately walked away. That act of walking away wasn't just an ending for you. It was a disruption to their entire world. Narcissists build their sense of self around control, admiration, and dominance. When someone like you leaves, when someone refuses to be manipulated anymore, it shakes the foundation of their carefully constructed reality. And that kind of loss doesn't fade easily from their thoughts. They replay moments where you challenge them, where you called out their behavior, where you refuse to play along. These memories haunt them, not because they care about you, but because those moments expose their limitations. They remind them that their power isn't absolute, that someone once looked past a mask and saw the fragile, insecure person underneath. Their continued obsession with you, even from a distance, is not a reflection of your value or importance to them. It's a symptom of their own instability. The truth is, they can't move on because doing so would mean accepting a reality where they weren't in control. And that's something they are simply not equipped to handle. But here's the empowering truth. You no longer have to carry the weight of their fixation. You are free to heal. You are free to grow. You are free to build a life that no longer revolves around their chaos, their games, or their need for validation. Every step you take toward your own well-being weakens their hold on your thoughts and emotions. The more you embrace your own truth, your own boundaries, your own strength, the less mental space they will occupy. Because healing isn't about erasing the past. It's about reclaiming your present. It's about stepping into a version of yourself that no longer looks back, no longer wonders what they think, and no longer allows their presence, real or imagined, to dictate your peace. And when you do that, when you fully step into your own power and stop giving them room in your mind, you strip them of something they can never truly replace. The illusion that they ever had any real control over you in the first place. That, more than anything, is why they can't let go. Not because you were theirs to begin with, but because you were the one who proved they were never truly in control at all.